joining us today on this Twitter webinar. We're going to have Karen Masulo with us. Karen is over in Charleston, South Carolina, and there are storms going through. So there may be some interruptions, but if so, be prepared and we'll compensate for that one way or another. We're glad to have so many of you with us. Hello to our friends in the Netherlands once again. Hello to our Canadian friends and people all around the United States. We are certainly glad to have you with us today. Karen, of course, is the Executive Vice President of Firestorm for social media, and she knows this stuff like the back of her hand, follows it very well, and really has good insights and information about the process. So, Karen, over to you.
Well, thank you, Bill. You're so gracious. Thank you, everyone, for joining us today. Bill Baker is our moderator and is our VP of Operations for Firestorm, and I'm always grateful to have him on these calls with us. So thank you, Bill, for being there. If you have a question during the session, Bill is monitoring the chat area in your GoToWebinar chat box. It should be in a little pop-up on the right side of your screen. So if you have a question, you can type it in there, and if there is time, Bill will let me know what those questions are at the end of our session. If there is not time, we will make every effort to respond to you personally via our Facebook page, a blog post, or on Twitter. Speaking of Twitter, if you have a question that I can answer after the session, the hashtag is hashtag FS for Firestorm Crisis. On Facebook, you can find us at facebook.com/Firestorm Solutions. And of course, if you'd like a presentation like this, more customized for your industry, your employees, your area, your regional area, please just let us know. I love doing that for you. Okay, you know us, we're Firestorm, and if you don't know us and this is your first time attending one of our sessions, we're very happy to meet you. We support your leadership and management in your organization before, during, and after a crisis. Our goal is to transform crisis into value and to empower people to manage risk and crises. And specifically today we're going to be talking in the area of social media. Any work product provided by Firestorm must be read in conjunction with all guidance given by national, regional, and local authorities, as well as your company's personal counsel. And the information given and comments made in this webinar should not be interpreted as legal advice or legal opinion. That's me. I'm Karen. That picture's almost a year old, so I keep promising I'll get a new one. I do serve as Firestorm's in-house social media advisor, as well as on behalf of our clients. And I appreciate all of your input via our Twitter account, Facebook account, and our blog. And I'm always very happy to exchange and engage in conversation with you via those platforms. So thank you, those of you that are always in communication. All right, today's presentation, we're going to be talking again about social media risk, monitoring that risk, and merged media. And we're going to talk today about kicking yourself in the teeth. And these past 60 days, I honestly could have gone on creating material for this webinar for hours. There was so much going on, and I think that's one thing I want to talk about in this webinar, and of course others as we go forward. Social media risk we identified as a valid risk about 3 years ago. And at the time when I would look for specific instances of people making a little mistake here and there, we would find maybe 4 really significant ones a month. And now we're finding about 4 a minute. Just as the use has escalated and evolved, the way people seem to get in trouble has as well. So we're going to look at some of those instances and see what we can learn. We're going to talk about things not to say after you have possibly tripped up or someone in your organization has tripped up. We're going to talk a little bit about the business impact and then some strategies, recommendations for what you need to be doing. And a lot of those are the same things, again, we've been talking about for 2.5 or 3 years, but we really want to make sure that in addition to watching these webinars and thinking about what we're talking about, that you're really engaging your teams, your employees, whether you have 3 or 30,000, whether you're engaging them in these conversations so that when a crisis occurs, whether it is one that happens on social media or one that happens to your facilities, to your property, through a natural disaster, that you're prepared and ready to respond, leveraging all of the channels that you're able to. And that's the goal. So how does your company use social media in a crisis? Well, let's look at how some companies do and how some create the crisis for them. I know that a lot of you, like me, are aware of the first company we're going to talk about. I am a fan and a foodie of every cooking show that's out there, and Gordon Ramsay's show is restaurant, whichever one he does, is certainly one that I watch, and Amy's Baking Company was on the show. Amy's Baking Company had, I believe it was in December of 2012 that they had filmed with Mr. Ramsay, and after 2 days they shut production down. Mr. Ramsay said he couldn't help these people and he walked away. And prior to the show airing in May, the couple who were featured in the show had some sort of empty statements on their social media accounts. They were excited that the show was airing. But where this really started was in 2011 and before, because of a Yelp review. And I think we've all seen some things about Yelp, and you know, are the good reviews being posted, and is it selective? And I mean, it's a challenging social tool, especially for those of you that are in service-oriented businesses and business-to-consumer businesses that get Yelp reviews. Well, they had one and they didn't like it, and the way they responded back then was by engaging the person who created the review in a really negative way. And we could talk long and far about how that engagement should have gone, but leave it to say that engagement didn't go well. So since 2011, there had been building social diatribes going on about Amy's Baking Company, but most of us didn't hear about them until May. And at that time in the show itself, there were some instances that were revealed in the show that left many people aghast. Those of you who are in the restaurant industry on the call who watched it probably gasped when it was revealed that the owners of the restaurant kept their employees' tips, which we know is not something legal. And additionally, that there were products the company was saying they had prepared and made when actually they had purchased those and repackaged them. That fact came out on social media when the company who prepared those products said, hey, we didn't give you permission to repackage our products. So Amy's Baking Company then posted on May 10th, we don't feel the need to make any excuses for our behavior. However, we'd like to make the following statement. So they made a few clarifying statements, and we're not prepared for the thousands of people who descended upon their Facebook site that began conversations on Reddit and on Twitter and on Yelp, and it exploded. And when I say thousands, I should say hundreds of thousands, and they're still going on today. And again, instead of sort of stepping back and figuring out how to manage this process, they were very, very reactive and aggressive in their responses and insulting, and it got to the point where it was macabre and humorous. It just started to become a meltdown, and some of the messages were just shocking that a business, no matter how large or how small, would carry out. Now, there's a whole other school of thought that says any publicity is great publicity. We're getting great publicity from this. So whether it's a brilliant marketing move or just a really strange way to use social media, I think it was a strange way to use social media. And this went on and is going on now for 2 months. As a matter of fact, if you go to the company's homepage and just do a Google search, you'll see that there's a warning that the site may have been compromised. And if you want to buy certain drugs for sale, you can. But there were thousands and thousands of articles, news articles about this, and they are certainly not, didn't paint the company in a positive light at all. And at one point, the company posted this message: due to the overwhelming amount of complaints from the show, we now have a designated number to call to accept all of your calls. That phone number that they posted was the phone number of someone who had taken issue with the restaurant and their service. They actually posted a user's phone number, not their own, which I just stunning lack of maturity and foresight. Their own Twitter page, this is the header from their own Twitter page, says, please visit our blog at Amy's Baking Company. I don't know when the last time they checked that was, but that link has been redirected to petitions.whitehouse.gov. And the petition is to have one of the owners committed, and it's not a serious petition, but I'm just shocked that this has been up for 2 months and nobody is checking these areas. So this is really an extreme case of when not just Twitter, but social media goes bad. And one user on their Facebook page, if I could meet this person, I would hug them, just posted a really simple message that said, I think you guys need to recognize that Facebook isn't really a good channel for you. And I liked that personally, because I think that's really what it came down to, is how do you determine what channel is right for you and use it in a way that's effective. The next thing is that during this whole controversy and all of these things that were happening, the classic excuse came out of, obviously, our Facebook, Yelp, Twitter, and website have been hacked. I have to say, sometimes that's true, and looking at the redirection of the URL in the Twitter account, I can believe that that account was hacked. Although when you look at the messages and then pattern them back to the owners speaking styles, those messages actually appear to have come from the owners. But it's feasible that it could have been hacked. The problem is that every time somebody makes a mistake on Twitter, or it seemed like this past couple of months it was mostly Twitter, but wherever it happens, the excuse is, oh, our account was hacked. I got to tell you, you need to stop doing that. You need to stop doing stupid things so you don't have to say that. But that really doesn't work anymore. But they gave it a shot, and 48,257,000 people, at least liked that they gave that excuse a shot. These are real instances of when accounts have been hacked. I just wanted to show this to you. And these are all of the people. If at any time you're on Twitter, just go into Twitter and type in through the search, our account was hacked. And you will see hundreds and hundreds of messages a day come up. Usually these accounts realize they've been hacked because someone sends them a message and says, you just direct messaged me, which is a semi-private sort of way on Twitter to send a message to someone. You just DM'd me, weight loss secrets or something like that. And that's usually how people find out. So at some point, call us, talk to us, and we'll talk to you about monitoring your account for a hack in a better way. Again, there's another challenge here, and for those of you who have folks who do your social media for you, who may not be on the call, one of the challenges is that you can integrate your accounts together. So you can post on Facebook and have that feed to LinkedIn, have that feed to Twitter, have that feed to wherever it is you want it fed to, and in the reverse. You can have all these accounts talking to each other. The problem is that if someone is solely posting on Facebook and having those messages feed to other accounts, they're not being diligent about checking those other accounts as well. I worked with one company at the end of last year who was doing great on their Facebook account and hadn't realized that their Twitter account had been hacked for almost 6 months because they were just feeding from Facebook and never bothering to look at any interaction on Twitter. Sort of goes against the whole engagement idea. But that's just a part of due diligence. And you don't want to be one of these folks. You don't want to be Young Democrats or Southern Cross University or the Merlin Theater and have to apologize to people for having their account hacked. And the only way to make sure that doesn't happen is to have really secure passwords, to make sure that you've locked down the account that it goes to make sure that there's a senior leader in the company or 2 or 3 or 4 who also have access to the account so that everybody can get to the account in case something has happened. So we have the dog ate our homework, our account was hacked excuse, and how about the dog ate our food? And the reason I use that is here's another Yelp sort of response. And I really like the way this company handled this via social media and in the three-dimensional world. They put a sign out front and leveraged a Yelp review. Come in and try the worst meatball sandwich that one guy on Yelp ever had in his life. So I applaud this little restaurant for taking a humorous approach to what could have been a very serious situation. So opposite of what the Amy's Baking Company people did, this company sort of turned it around a bit, and I appreciate that. However, it's something important to recognize, and we're not just going to be talking about food establishments today, but they seem to be in the news and on social media quite a bit in the last 60 days. One of those was a very high-end cruise ship, very expensive, high-end, and because there was the thought that an inspector was going to come on board, over a period of about 1.5 years, employees had been taking these photographs of when they were ordered to hide or move food into their rooms, into their cabins, so that it would not be available to inspectors to inspect. And that's what these photographs are. And the photograph in the bottom left is an emergency exit door that's blocked. And that door very clearly says, do not block. And so, in addition to seeing examples of, sadly, restaurant employers doing things in restaurants that are questionable or downright disgusting, we also have the instance of people within your organization being very clear whistleblowers. And in this case, I think anyone who's ever traveled on this cruise ship and eaten the food is grateful that this has come to light. So, let's not be hiding things. Let's do things the right way. Because in today's world, the ability to get the information out so that people like the CDC can see it is instantaneous. And this has been quite a black eye. Additionally, there's something else to think about here, and that is sabotage. What if the leadership on this ship did not order this to be done? What if they did it just to sabotage someone or just to take pictures and leak them out? That certainly has happened as well. As a matter of fact, there's one case we're going to look at where the person was accused of doing that, and that was at the Golden Corral. The Golden Corral was a fine establishment, but they had an employee who did 2 videos showing how they were ordered to take food out and quickly store it back by the dumpsters because the health inspector was coming to inspect. And there were accusations that that employee sort of set up the management there. However, Golden Corral, to their credit, acted very quickly and handled it internally, but these videos got a significant amount of play, significant. Additionally, I can't post the photos here. Subway recently had some of their sandwich artists fired for some pretty nauseating photos that they posted, Taco Bell. Now, I want you to notice something on this slide in specific. You know, we see some bad things about Subway. We see some negative things about Golden Corral. But the way the Taco Bell headline is worded is a bit different, and it was in many headlines. Taco Bell reacts quickly. So the headline of this story was not employee posts disgusting photo licking tacos, but instead it was Taco Bell reacts quickly. And I think one of the reasons for that is something we'll discuss at the end of this session, and that is, again, as we've talked about before, your brand advocates will come to your rescue in a number of ways. And Taco Bell has deeply loyal social media brand advocates for 2 reasons. One, they like the restaurant. People like Taco Bell. The other reason is their social media team is awesome. They're funny. They're authentic. They respond in just a great way for the brand. So if you're interested, and no matter, again, you don't have to be a food service organization, but boy, the folks at Taco Bell really do some awesome stuff with their social media accounts. So when something like this happens, there is a friendly feeling toward Taco Bell because we know they're playing the game well, and they're good at it, and they mean it. They like their customers, they like their product, and they like what they do, and you can hear it through the authenticity of their messaging. So I think they're a good case study for when something goes right and how your brand advocates will come to help you. Here's another case of something that could have gone terribly wrong that went a little bit better. Someone was walking by this restaurant when it was closed and saw a rat. Someone else saw the same thing, saw 3 rats on a table through the window when the restaurant was closed. And this group of restaurants, has a really great reputation in Philadelphia, and it just had the potential to really kill this brand. The brand responded very quickly and said that that specific Midtown location was not going to be opening. They had a sewer pipe break. And for any of you who own a house or own any business, things happen like that. And then posted images of the work of it being prepared, which explained this sort of horrendous image, and this wasn't the only image, but they showed what was happening. We're hard at work fixing the problem. They acknowledged that there was an issue. They took great steps to communicate it, and then they showed images of it being resolved and gave people an alternate location that they own to go to. So I think in a terrible situation like that, they really responded well and used not only their brand advocates but social media in order to manage that message going forward. Oops, went the wrong way. Again, I'm not going to focus just on restaurants here, but I found this information on smirknewmedia.com, and there will be a recording of this webinar when we're done, and you can also, we'll also post the PDFs for you to download on our website, and the hyperlinks to these different articles and information will be included in the PDF. So I'm just going to quickly mention this, but I want you to think about it in context of your organization and how you leverage social media and how you look at the voice of your company. I am the social media voice. Well, there are a couple of us, but I started the social media voice for Firestorm, and I take my job very seriously. And it is a job that requires a mature voice. I think carefully. I don't always get it right, but I do think carefully about it because I respect the company and the people I work with, and because we deal with some pretty significant crisis situations. And this one article was discussing how many restaurants are going to social media. They want to use social media, but rather than use their marketing team or rather than hire a company to do their social media for them, they're using part-time staff within the facilities, their restaurant locations themselves. And the pros of that is, you know, the people should know and love and be able to represent the brand and the product, and that they can easily talk with staff and the management of the company and, you know, do some fun real-time things. There are a lot of cons about that. That include who's going to monitor the social when the staffer is doing their actual job, and do you really want people just posting sort of random photos of things that are going on in the restaurant on Instagram and not looking in the background to see what we may be missing? Are they skilled and trained in social media? Just because you've been using Facebook since you were 14 doesn't mean you actually know how to use social media. So who's going to train them and make sure that they understand how to use it? And all of the changes that come along with new platforms evolving, and again, the risks that go along with connecting accounts and content creation and your customer service and your overall marketing strategy. Do they know and understand best practices? Are they reliable? Can they be trusted? It goes back again to maturity. How do you know whether the employee that you're giving your company's voice to is mature enough to manage that? Who has control over the password for the account? If something happens to that employee, or as if you may remember in the HMV example, when the entire company was being laid off and the person in charge of social media was tweeting it and nobody knew how to get that account back from that person, do you know how to get that password back? Do you know how to manage and edit what's posted? Will your brand's overall social media experience suffer if that person leaves for another job? And does the person managing your social media know how do we measure whether what we're doing is even working? This was a quote from that article. Leaving your social brand management in the hands of someone who is not dedicated to the practice is dangerous, says David Schwartz, a restaurant branding expert out of Nashville. It shows a lack of appreciation of the medium and how quickly something can go spiraling downward. My biggest issue with this type of practice is that it sounds like an execution without a focused strategy and plan. So again, we're not talking just about the restaurant industry, but that's a really great point of view in my point of view. I am dedicated to the practice of social media, to the use of its tools, and we have a focused strategy and plan in our social use, and so should you. So let's not talk about restaurants anymore. We're going to talk about a professional golfer. You know, people, individuals, and we saw this very clearly, especially because there were a couple of big trials that were going on, Zimmerman, et cetera, and it brought out people in the NFL, in the basketball community, the baseball community, and there were so many examples that I decided to use Mr. Elkington because Mr. Elkington is a golfer, and he has sponsors. We had sponsors, and Mr. Elkington went on sort of a racist Twitter rant that was very short-lived, but I don't know if those of you who may not know about golf, Lee Westwood is one of the Twitterers here, and he is a famous athlete in his own right, golfer in his own right. And even he said, I know it's Friday night, but you know, how much has Elkington had to drink? And that's a great way to just destroy your brand. And the Telegraph picked it up, the Telegraph Sport. It's their sports section of the Telegraph, and they posted the tweet of what he had said, even though, you know, it had been deleted. There's no such thing as deleting a Facebook message or a tweet. Please don't delude yourself. And I left out the very last thing he said that was offensive because I didn't want to include it in this because it was indeed offensive. So more than just hurting his brand, he put people in danger. He created an event where he needed to be given a police escort because people were threatening him and those around him physical harm. He will be disciplined if he has not already. I'm sorry, I didn't look that up. But this is one little tweet that he made because of a situation that he was upset about. Someone, a caddy, had been robbed. He made it a racist thing, and it turned into a situation that could have been very, very serious as far as people and property. We're going to talk a little bit about Bank of America. I want to preface this by saying, for those of you on the call, especially in the financial sector, the rules and regulations around how you engage your audience on social media are, they're very disciplined. And so you look for consistency of messaging, and there's an approval process that is required. So I want to preface this example by saying, I get that. And I'm going to explain to everyone else on the call why that's an important point in this example. Sadly, Bank of America gained some media attention recently because of what I think was a relatively minor incident that happened that became a much larger incident because basically they were targeted by some folks in the Occupy movement. But it wasn't evident that that's what was happening right away. And the one thing that came out was that Bank of America had a Twitter fail, but if you really look at the situation, I don't think that's completely what happened. And there are just hundreds and hundreds of articles, thousands actually, and shares of this situation. This is a picture that's made in chalk that was created out in front of Bank of America's New York headquarters, and it says illegal foreclosures, fraud, theft, and it's this big drawing. And this then is the photograph. If you'll see the gentleman on the right, I believe, walking away, he's being asked to leave by a diligent policeman from blocking and defacing the street in front of Bank of America. This guy tweeted this under the auspices of, my house has been stolen, I'm in foreclosure, what can I do? This is my only means of protest. And then was tweeting about it, just got chased away by NYPD for obstructing the sidewalk. And other folks that were supporting him in this effort started re-sharing it and sharing it with the Occupy movement, which then gives it legs. Bank of America responded and said, hi, Mr. Timms, I work for Bank of America. What happened? Anything I can do to help? Now, at this point in time, I would love to work with the Bank of America customer care team to understand better why, once they looked at Mr. Timms' account, realized that he was sarcastically commenting in support to this dark mark, maybe why they responded in exactly the way they did. But I can also understand, by being a financial institution, you have a specific way and a consistency in which you need to respond to your customers. What was suspected, because each time someone got in the conversation, the same sort of tweet went out from Bank of America, was road gone wrong, started saying, your tweets seem like a computer. And there are software programs out there that, whenever your brand name is mentioned, will send out a message that says, hey, thanks for liking us. Hey, thanks for doing this, which are a really bad idea. They're a bad idea because when people are saying that your brand is a terrible thing and you respond back by saying, hey, thanks for the mention, it's kind of embarrassing. In this case, that is not what happened. Each of these is different, but it's consistent in its response. It says, hi, Syrian, what happened? So this person did actually look at for a first name. Is there anything I can do to help? And then if you look at some of the tweets and the information that happened afterward, which weren't covered in all of those news articles, you can see that this group of people said this went so much better than they'd imagined. This little gang-up thing that they were doing on Bank of America, and they're calling it their chalk-uppy antics. They are making, sure to mention the media outlets like Salon that picked it up. I went back even farther in their Twitter streams to look at the information on planning this. Did they mention Bank of America by name? Was there a way that Bank of America could have monitored and predicted this particular instance? I even went back so far as to see where they got the idea for the chalk art itself. And so that is a great lesson that we get from this, is not only how are you monitoring your brand, but how are you monitoring your address, your physical location, those areas near you. If you're at the corner of 71st and 8th or 42nd and Oak Street, are you monitoring that as well to see if there's something going on? In this case, I think it was just a well-planned attack on a large financial institution, and it's certainly a risk that needs to be observed and looked at. And Bank of America responded, we're not bots, we're real people here to help. If you do need our help, our real-life reps are here to assist. All of our interactions are personal and handled by a team of more than 100 social media servicing representatives. We respond to mentions of the bank to help identify underlying customer issues in addition to direct requests for help. So I think they responded as best they could. I'm sorry they got so much media attention, but they were targeted in this. And I think that's an important lesson. We know that via the new FSIEC, through SEC, through FDIC, there are so many regulations in the financial world and the financial institution that require that you identify, measure, monitor, and control social media. that there is an expectation of risk. Financial institutions must, not should, must manage potential risk associated with social media use and access, and failure can lead to enforcement activities and civil lawsuits. So what we at Firestorm recommend is that everybody follow those rules, no matter what industry you're in, because those are the highest standards. And if you know that you're working to those highest standards, you know that your people are trained correctly, they can respond in a crisis, you are capturing reports, you're monitoring not only for your brand but for threats and other issues, that you're going to have a much more mature and robust program than those that don't. I am not going to talk about the cover of the Rolling Stone. I think that's not a social media issue. What I do have an issue with is Christian Horde tweeting what was an absolutely inappropriate message, who is the editor, by the way, after so many people were incensed by the cover of Rolling Stone. When he tweeted, I guess we should have drawn a blank on Stokar's face or something. And I saw it when it happened, and I was more incensed than I had been. And someone tweeted to him, "Don't worry, you might have deleted your tweet, but Boston caught it." And the Boston Globe caught it. And so I think the entire city of Boston grabbed that. It was really just a stupid thing to do. There was no reason for it. And so the tweet was deleted, and the next day, why it took that long, I don't know, he did tweet, "Yesterday I made a sarcastic remark here in response to the Rolling Stone cover controversy. I stand by our cover, but not my tweet. It was inappropriate and disrespectful." Yeah, okay, that pretty much sounds like somebody forced him to apologize. I bring this up simply because you have a senior editor at an organization that has been in publication for years and years and years who just did something. I can understand he was frustrated, he was handling phone calls, et cetera, but we hire people in our organization and expect them to act in a mature manner. And this was just simply an immature response. That is forgivable under stress and under duress. But if you are practiced, if you are talking to your employees about how to respond in crisis, if you have message maps created for them for a crisis, the likelihood of them off the cuff doing something stupid is lessened. The likelihood that they will sit back and think for a moment is increased. There was a lot that happened as well in, as we discussed on our webinar regarding the Boston bombing. Social media shared a lot of responsibility for many of the mistakes, such as the misidentification of the bombers. But journalists who followed social media and just sort of reshared information without checking it were at fault, and I think that's an important point here. The other thing I just wanted to mention, neither being for or against, but the page that was created to save Sergeant Murphy, the person who leaked, which is basically what he did, the Rolling Stone pictures to the Boston Globe, I believe it was, has almost 70,000 supporters and followers. I'm not going to go into the idea that he violated his terms of employment and his job. That is a separate crisis, but that has to be taken in consideration, the fact that 66,000 people right now are sort of watching every move that the police department makes in this regard. All right, our next section, and we're coming up to the top, is don't fake it. You can hire people to do fake testimonials for you, or you can just be Twitter and make them up. It was recently disclosed that Twitter created fake testimonials to promote its some new services. Its television-related advertising platform. Shame on you, Twitter. Twitter got a little carried away with itself in a recent blog post about its new ad targeting feature. The post contained a screenshot of the analytics and some customer testimonials. Neil Gottlieb, in particular, was offended by it because he didn't say it and he didn't tweet it. And he made sure they knew he knew, and discussed that with the San Francisco Chronicle, and has contacted his attorney and stated it is totally an unacceptable tactic they employed, not an adequate accountability statement in my view in relation to their apology. So please don't fake it. This is another fake. This happened in 2012, but you know, this was HealthNet was trying to be social, so in their billboard, which is kind of old media, new media coming together, merged media, they did this quote by @BusinessGuy, and I think they probably thought, well, I'm sure @BusinessGuy doesn't really exist. Did anybody check? Because the account actually does exist, and they got slammed for faking it. However, if you do want to fake it, there is an application called a Fake Tweet Builder. Now, please understand there would not be an application called a Fake Tweet Builder if people weren't faking these sorts of comments and conversations. So it's important that you're aware that these things are occurring. Please check the hashtag, folks. I love Entenmann's. I think a good part of my personal weight is funded by Entenmann's. And they had a great little tweet. Hey, who's not guilty about eating all the tasty treats they want? They didn't check the hashtag before they used it. And they used it right when the Zimmerman trial verdict was coming down. And I think it was the Zimmerman. It may have been Jodi Arias. And they said, sorry, everyone, we weren't trying to reference the trial in our tweet. We should have checked the trending hashtag first. Good apology. Yes, you should have. You're forgiven. Don't do it again. The business impact. Companies still lack key processes, measurements, and standardized tool sets to measure the impact of social media. I'm going to use a really serious example so that you really understand the impact. The first tweet on the Six Flags accident was a person on the ride who saw someone fly off the ride. All of this came out within seconds. Several witnesses on social media immediately after the incident said it appeared her restraint either broke or came loose. That suddenly becomes the fact. Whether it's true or not, whether Six Flags has had an opportunity to address it, that suddenly gets picked up as what's going to be said. Investigators have yet to confirm it, though. People won't even read that sentence. Park visitors were not told immediately of the accident, although word of the woman's death traveled quickly by word of mouth and on social media. If you are on Twitter or on any social media and you go back to that date and search the term, it was instantaneous, and there were hundreds of thousands of messages. On Twitter, witnesses described it. It's crazy that I was at Six Flags today and a woman died on the Texas Giant while I was there. He was just there, and he's spreading it out. Suddenly people are contacting him. Six Flags failed to report 3 injuries at its parks in the last 5 years. So suddenly people are digging to see what other problems are there. HuffPost Six Flags shares down after fatal accident. And that is the bottom line for your business. How is this going to hurt my industry? This is about a family, and Six Flags was addressing that issue. It's a terrible crisis. And all of this other information that's coming really overcomplicates their job of trying to make sure that the family was all right, that there were other things that needed to be addressed. And of course, the safety of the ride and the safety of their people. Everything gets so confused, though, when on social media a specific area of the topic gets highlighted. This is especially disturbing to me. Not only was there then an editorial, Six Flags credibility is at risk after this roller coaster death, but this screenshot purports to be, I don't know if it's been by Joe Schmo, purports to be from an employee. Well, because it purports to be and it's shared on social media, that suddenly becomes fact. Media organizations may pick this up and say, an unnamed source says, her safety suddenly becomes a quotable as an example for the worst, and have materials ready and have them be appropriate to whatever the medium is, whether you're using texting, social media, Twitter, Facebook, Pinterest. Make sure your team has key messages. There are 3 key messages for whatever the incident is, and then each one appropriate to the social tool that they're using. Be aware of, again, if you're going to use hashtags, hashtags allow your information to be easily found, but please check the hashtag first. Even if it's a hashtag you've used in the past, someone else may be using it for something completely unrelated to what you're using it for. Check the hashtag first. Every time we do one of these webinars, we use FS Crisis, I check it before we start the webinar to make sure no one else is using it for some other reason. Be authentic, whoever the voice of your social media is, or your social media team. Authenticity of voice is something that is nurtured and learned. Make sure that you are reading tweets and other information in context. Remember that Bank of America experience. To go back and look at that person's Twitter account and just sort of get a feel for where they were coming from and what was going on allows the person responding to either decide to respond or not, or to escalate it to a manager and say, is this something we should be responding to? And also just gives context to the entire situation. Explore an issue thoroughly before you respond or reshare it. Please, please, please. I like this quote. When we talk about being authentic, we're asking people to be authentic to an idea, to the character, to the brand we represent, while at the same time infusing it with a little of our own personality, a little of what it means to be human. And when you start to think about it that way, it becomes a lot less clear because it's challenging. Whoever voices Taco Bell does a great job of it. They're humorous, they're funny, and they respond in a way that's appropriate to the fun of the brand. Pattern excellence in information sharing. Share information with police officials in a secure and private manner, not via your social account unless that is the way they've asked for it. Make sure you're also partnering with your community in the same way, if they need help or if you need their help. Partner with your local police and emergency social accounts to ensure that you're helping them with continuity and consistency of official messaging. And be aware of issues and training your folks that will add to the effectiveness of all of your social media use and the maturity of your voice. and will reduce your need to manage risks so that you can concentrate on the big ones that do occur. And please identify and leverage your brand advocates. They are going to help you in a crisis. As always, we ask that you think about it in our 3 Ps. Predict, understand your vulnerabilities, the threats and the impacts. Plan by developing your policies, your processes, and your procedures. And in performance, implement viable solutions that include constant training and testing. That's how you build a comprehensive program, and that's what we do. We're here to help you do that. You'll be able to look at the risk profile of a company and what that includes in national standards now and guidance on social media, compliance, legal risk, operating risk, reputational risk. And when you download the PDF, and I'm sorry, but it's going to, it won't be available on the website until tomorrow, but we will make sure that for everyone who's attended the session that we send you out a link to that. But we'll have links to some articles that Jim Satterfield, our fantastic president, has written in this regard. And if you want him to come in and do a special session for your folks on compliance itself, he is awesome at it. And make sure you're asking what are the metrics to assure that your social team now is ready and mature enough to handle any new stringent regulations, but also a crisis situation. What would I like you to do next? I want you to read and share on our blog. We have a great article we've just posted by one of our Firestorm principals, Paige Rucker. And this is an article on someone named Sean Allen, who was a journalist and decided to share on her blog some very interesting secrets, things like she steals mail and gives it back sometimes, which last time I looked was a federal crime. But Paige has done, she has some first-person experience in this particular situation. She wrote a great article for us. So please go to our blog. Just go to our website, click on blog, and Paige would be happy to answer any questions you leave in the comments. Any other questions, please do leave them in the comments on our Facebook page or on our Twitter account. And for a presentation like this or a webinar for your organization, please just give me a call at 800-321-2219 or send an email to kmasulo@firestorm.com or webinars@firestorm.com. Bill, I think that brings us to the top of the hour. I've enjoyed my time, and thank you very much. Any last thoughts, Bill?
No, thank you very much. Great deal of material that you covered today, Karen, and there are some questions for us to follow up after, and we will get to those individually. Thank you very much, Karen.
Thank you, and everyone have a great day. I look forward to seeing you next session.